So I'm going to talk about rotational grazing. This is one of our cows autumn. I think that's her calf June bug from a couple years ago on our farm. And I'm going to have to talk fast to get it done in an hour, but here we go. This is our agenda. I'm going to talk about our farm. We're going to talk big picture about infrastructure, about what some of the issues are with cows, about maybe some other ways of doing things, how we do it a little bit, and what some folks smarter than I am say. And then could what I do on my farm actually be done on a larger scale? Got some closing thoughts as well. So here we are, we're Hartland Farm. We're changing our name because I'm giving everything away to my kids, and my daughter wants the farm, and that's what she wants for a name, so we're changing our name. We're 5 miles west of town on West Midland Trail. If you come out to the dump station at Kerrs Creek, we are right across the road from the dump station. We're easy to find. That's what we've got. We've got cows, heifers, be future milkers. Our goal is to have 12 milk cows. We'll eat the offspring. My daughter's training the ox. We got turkeys, we got sheep. We got a little bit of everything. And 2 generations of my family are there, and hopefully another one soon. All right, working on that 3rd generation. First, and then up at the top, I've got the different parts of our agenda. So now we're on part 2. We're going to talk about infrastructure. Food and agriculture is one of the 16 critical infrastructures that the Department of Homeland Security recognizes. That number goes up and down, but food and ag is always in there. And I like to say that food and ag is the Rodney Dangerfield of infrastructure because it just don't get no respect. And the reason is very simple. When the electricity goes out, you know it right now. When the water goes out, you know it right now. If there's a problem in food and ag, you might not know it for a month, right? Because there's a lot of squish in there, a lot of lead time. And so that's one of the things that makes it different. This is the food and agriculture infrastructure sector. It's huge. $1.1 trillion in GDP, 2,100,000 farms, give or take a few. All those food facilities, including the foreign ones. You hear about avocados just yesterday, right? Somebody threatened one of our avocado inspectors. That's a USDA inspector, an FDA inspector in Mexico, right? So that's part of this system. And so everything we talk about has got to take into account how big this food and ag system is. When you've got something that big, you need ways to think about it. So here's a couple of things. Infrastructure component model. Every infrastructure, doesn't matter if it's a well pump on your house or the food and agriculture or power system, has these 6 functions. Generation, we got to make it. Bulk transmission, we move large quantities, long distances with limited access. Nobody connects there. That's what you need distribution for. Small quantities, short distances to connect to the user, which is the most important part. Somebody wants it and will pay. Not always the same person, no. Every infrastructure produces waste, and it's got to have this coordination and control aspect that makes the whole system function together. So when we talk about food and agriculture or any other infrastructure, usually they talk about 1 or 2 pieces, but you've really got to think about all 6 functions. It's that complicated. Also, the operational environment, borrowed this from the Army, great way to think about things. All problems have these dimensions. Political, which is how we make decisions and implement them. Public health and security. Economic, how you pay. Social, what our society is like. Information, how we talk about it. Infrastructure, the physical systems to deliver things. And the physical environment that we're talking about. Because the physical environment in Rockbridge County is not the physical environment in Kansas. The 2 are very different. And the social aspect that you absolutely have to remember when we're talking about food and agriculture as an infrastructure is 80% of the population of the United States lives in 20% of the land. It's 80-20. As a matter of fact, 50% of the population lives in 4, count them, 4% of the counties. 140 of our 3,300 plus counties hold 50% of the US population, and we have to feed them. So more information, if you look up TR 1414, you'll find a whole book written on this. Now, we can think about beef production on the 2 extremes. On the left is the commodity model, right? So that's what you get your beef in the store. You've got a cow-calf farm, go to the sales barn, the shipper moves it to a feedlot, feed supplier brings the feed in, Somebody purchases all those cattle, puts them on another thing to ship, goes to a processor, goes to a warehouser, goes to a distributor, goes to a grocery store, and finally goes to you. It's got that whole big system to deliver beef to you. Or there's the direct model, which is about as compact as you can get if you're not doing it all yourself. The farm, the butcher, and the customer. Right? I saw Dave came on. He was one of my customers. So he's been a part of that model. I'm the farm, Mount Joy's the butcher, Dave's the customer. Simple as can be. And there's a whole range of things in between there. So again, when we talk about agriculture as an infrastructure, we've got to remember these two bookends and everything in the middle. All right, so what's the beef with beef? Everybody says, oh, beef's bad, beef's bad. Well, why do they say that? Well, maybe someone saw an image like this. This came from Denver Water. It says a cow eats thousands of pounds of grass, grain, corn, soybeans, humma, humma, humma. So raise a pound of beef, according to these folks, takes 1,847 gallons of water. Ugh, that's not good. Peanuts, almonds, soybeans, not better. Doesn't have avocados on here. They're not very good either. All right, but vegetables, oh, they're good, down at 39 gallons to raise 1 pound of food. Maybe someone read Livestock's Long Shadow, published by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization in 2008, I think, that said livestock generate 14.5% of the greenhouse gas emissions, which is more than the transportation sector does. Or maybe you did a water footprint calculator like I did one time, answer how many kids you got, how many times you take a shower, how much meat do you eat, answer that. And it says your family uses 1,440 gallons per day due to my meat consumption. I said, wait a minute, that is not right. I know that is not right because I put the water that my meat eats in a truck, in a bucket, and haul it out to them every day. And I don't haul 1,400 gallons of water. So where'd this come from? You go digging in the stuff behind the website, and this is what you find. It presumes that this is the only way to raise meat and milk. That you take cows, you put them in a feedlot, and you feed them irrigated grain. That is the choice. That's why it takes so much water. Same for milk. That picture right there is from a 20,000 cow dairy in California. So here's the math on my farm. This is the back hillside of the farm. On the left of that picture is where the cows were eating about 10 minutes ago. On the right is where I just moved them. So you can see the different heights of the grass. Our beef, when we butcher it, is an average of 2 years old, give or take a little bit. The average weight of our steers is 505 pounds, given from the time they're born to the time they die. That's the average. Cows drink 1.5 gallons of water per day per 100 pounds of body weight, times 365 times 2. That means my cows or my steers on average will drink 5,530 gallons of water. They get 0 grain, right? Effectively 0, maybe a handful. They don't get any grain. We don't feed them. They get grass, and that's it. One of our steers will produce 350 pounds of beef. When you do the math, that's 16 gallons per pound. 16 gallons. Well, that's where my beef shows up. It's better than vegetables. Even if I'm wrong by 100% and it's double and it's 32 gallons per pound, I'm still better than vegetables. Well, how about this? Livestock Long Shadow. The trouble with the report is it's wrong. Now, Steve Hart didn't say it's wrong. If Steve Hart did, you probably shouldn't listen to him. Professor out of California points out that that report uses a life cycle emission for livestock and a tailpipe emission for transportation. 2 different system boundaries. It's apples and footballs. You can't compare different system boundaries. Now, if somebody complains about a report, you can take that with a grain of salt. This was presented to one of the authors of the report, and that's his response.
All right,
Has written several other articles pointing out that, yeah, we got the system boundaries wrong. Uh-oh, internet's unstable. I don't know if it's going to work. I'll keep talking. Hopefully it catches up.
Well, we should try letting Barbara feed the slides and then and see if we can do it with your video alone. And then if that is an issue, then we would just go to audio. That sound doable, Barbara? Did we lose Barbara too? All right, well, I've got the videos. I mean, I got the slides.
No. I'll run it, Eli, if Steve says to go ahead that way.
Go ahead, Barbara, put them up.
Okie dokie. Hang on, folks. Technical difficulties. We'll be right with you.
I have this effect on computers and things.
Glad
It
I'm
was
not the
going
only
well.
one. It's usually me. All righty. There we go. We're getting ready to do this. Mhm.
Steve should be able to see what you have on the screen.
I hope so. All righty. So here was number one. What was the little calf's name?
That's Junebug.
Junebug. I love the name. I
My
thought.
daughter gives them the names.
Okay. Here we go. 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 The long shadow. And there's your beef. Okay. Next slide. We're at the bar graph now with you on it at 16.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
All right, so that's where we talk about the issue with livestock's long shadow. Is that the number they have isn't correct because we're using two different system boundaries, so we can't actually compare the numbers, right? Now, here's something that's very, very important.
Oh dear.
Are we missing them again?
Yeah. I guess we're going to have to do away with this video.
Well, here we go. Something's happening.
All right, hold on. All right, I turned my video off. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I'm not very pretty anyway, so it's no great loss. Okay, so livestock's long shadow. If it's not 14.5% of admission,
I'm fine.
%10 of our greenhouse gas emissions. And if you pull up the little pie chart and can see it, livestock is 38% of that. Well, 38% of 10% is 3.8%. So the EPA's number is that all livestock is 3.8% of our emissions. Okay, next slide, please. So given that the choice in our discussion, this is the information variable, how we talk about things, seems to be the only two options. What if I don't like? Just maybe there's some other ways of doing these things. Next slide, please. Now, I first learned about managed rotational grazing when I was in Kansas. It was about 2005. We went to the Tall Grass National Prairie. Now, we don't have forests in Kansas too much, but we have prairies. In Tall Grass National Prairie, they found a stand of what was a It's like, cool, we have a prairie. And they go out and they start studying the prairie, and they said the prairie was sick. That was their words, not mine. The prairie was sick, just wasn't right. So, well, what do we do? Well, what do we used to have on the prairie? Well, we used to have bison. Okay, let's go get some bison. So they went and got some bison. They put the bison out there in the prairie, and the prairie got a little.
Oh dear.
They did little chunks. They'd move it around. They'd burn different areas of prairie, and the prairie got a little bit better. They said, oh, well, what else do we used to have? Oh, Indians and wolves. All right, said Indians and wolves. What they did is they were predators for the bison. Now, but how can we simulate that? And they came up with, we could use electric poly rope. And so they moved the bison around using electric poly rope. And when it came time to call, they called. Get a PhD in prairie chicken, is that a prairie chicken actually needs 4 heights of prairie in its lifespan. And it's 4 or nothing. You have to have all 4 different heights of prairie to get a prairie chicken. And the way you get those 4 heights of prairie is bison and fire and rotation and predation. Basically, you manage the prairie in
Excuse me, Steve. We've had some suggestions from some of the participants. They're not getting a smooth audio from you, Steve. They suggest that everybody turn off their video. So if you can do that, and we'll see if that improves our broadcast, we'll try that. Keep going, Steve.
okay. Of the Indians, the fire, the bison, all this movement is actually what made our prairie healthy, so that when the settlers went west, you wind up with all these tall stands of prairie grass on the prairie. Oh, next slide. I forgot I'm not controlling those now.
Oh boy.
We have 10 to 20 acre permanent paddocks. We've got about 5 of them. We divide them with polywire so we confine the animals on an acre at a time, and we move them about once a week. Now, I could move them more often, but I got a day job and a night job and lots of other things to do, so they get moved about once a week. And the goal is that the cows and the sheep will bite the grass when it's tall and not when it's short. And right there, and where on the slide where it says grass growth rate, where it's rapid growth, when it hits the maturity, that's when you want to bite it. And you don't want to bite it below the bottom line. And if you do that, if you bite it and move and bite it and move and bite it and move, the grass keeps growing back a lot. Within our divisions, no place is more than 300 feet from water. So we're able to keep the cows confined and get them their water. We move chickens and turkeys around every day because they kind of get messy if you don't move them. And the goal is you bite the grass once, and then it's going to rest for months. We hit individual acres 2, maybe 3 times a year. If things are really lucky, there was one year when it was really wet and all the conditions were right. There was part of the farm we actually grazed over 5 times, the last time being the winter grazing that we stockpiled on it. All right, so it can work really, really well. That's how we do it. If you want to come see it, you're welcome to come out to the farm and visit. I'd be happy to show you how we do it. We don't do it perfectly, but we try and do it a little bit better each day. So let's see what people smarter than, or I'm sorry, next slide. Because I got to show you some of the results. So ecology and biodiversity. If you do this right, it does wonders for biodiversity. What you see there on the left is we were digging a test pit for a septic field. That's the root structure. You can't see the really fine roots in the picture, but the roots go 3 feet deep. The roots to the grass go 3 feet deep. The center picture, we have dung beetles, right? So you go out there and the cow pies are just getting chewed up by all the dung beetles. You can't stick a shovel in the ground anywhere on that farm without digging up earthworms, especially in the spring. There is so much stuff alive under the ground. It's amazing. And that's Snowflake and one of her calves from a couple years ago. You look at all the different grasses that are there. I lose count at about half a dozen because that's all I know. But there's clover and chicory and 3 or 4 different kinds of clover and orchard grass and fescue and a little bit of brome grass and just all sorts of diversity. We have bobwhite quail. Bobwhite quail just sort of showed up, didn't do anything but stop cutting hay and start managing with rotational grazing. I've got skunks and groundhogs and rabbits and foxes and just more things than I can count. All because all we did was rotate. Okay, next slide, please. So I did a little bit of an energy budget, right? So a calorie is a measure of energy, just like anything else is, and food calories are actually kilocalories. So I just did a simple one. If you want me to do any more than this, you're gonna have to pay me because it takes a lot of time and I don't have the time. But the outputs from our cattle production this past year are 900 pounds of beef, actual total beef, no bone, no nothing, just pure straight beef, and 400 gallons of milk. There's the calorie and capacity of those 2 foods. So out of our farm, out of our cows, we got 2 million calories. Well, what did it take to do that? That was half the energy bill for the farm. I just figured half all the energy bill does is pump the water. So we use just under 2 million kilocalories for the energy budget. So basically I put 2 million kilocalories in, got 2 million kilocalories out. We broke even when we think about energy budget. Are there some other things? Yes, I'm sure there are. But again, I didn't have time to go into detail, but this gives you kind of a good thumbnail. I'm getting out. Next slide, please. And you can go online and find right? And it really does work. And all you have to do is move the cows. If all you do is move the cows, this is what you get. And the more intensely you manage it, of course, the more the better you can get from it. But if you just move the cows, it makes things better. Next slide, please. But it was in a day or two of each other. Bark Solar Field actually used to be part of my farm when the previous family owned it. The new Fredericksburg Road divided it. There was 5 acres across. Bark bought that after they bought the Highland Bell School. Now I want you to look at those 2. Which of those has better biodiversity?